Welcome back to Free Founders, where we share actionable lessons from the world's best solopreneurs and small business owners. This is for aspiring entrepreneurs who want proven strategies to go from zero to first sale and onwards to scale and enjoy the freedom that comes along with it. My guest today is Alice Egan. She has run SaaS Savvy for 2 years, an online course helping sales, pre-sales, and success speak the language of tech. She's worked 5 years at Zendesk as they went through hypergrowth and has lived in Belgium, San Francisco, New York, London, and Berlin. So very curious to hear what that taught her, how that informed her. I love what a great example of picking a specific niche is with a very specific offer that SaaS Savvy represents. We're going to definitely talk about that. So in this episode, expect to learn, one, how Alice defined and validated a very unique offer. Secondly, what gave her the confidence to pivot from a pre-sales career into solopreneurship. And thirdly, the specific steps she took to get a paid pilot program out the door and actually get real customers to pay her. Excited to get started with this one. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
I want to start with a story that I've been told by your other half, Essie. So New York subway, as you're growing up, you're riding the subway every day, hearing, imagine, every single language in the world. How did that inform you, as a person, maybe also as an entrepreneur?
I've always been, I'll say this. My mom dabbles in languages. She loves languages. She teaches English as a second language to foreign business professionals in New York. And I grew up in New York City and the New York City suburbs. I think the story Jesse probably told you is just being in the subway with my mom, and she'd always nudge me and say, Alice, what language do you think those people are talking? And I think I ended up studying linguistics in college. And I think it's because languages unlock culture and they unlock stories of people and history. And I've always been interested in who people are and why they are the way they are. And I think once I graduated from college and got into the corporate world, I actually saw companies and the products they build and the customers they served sort of as extensions of people. I mean, I won't romanticize a large corporation, but when I eventually got into pre-sales, I was really interested, in this role in pre-sales and software. You sit down with business, you sit down with companies, you sit down with businesses, and they essentially open up the hood of their car and explain to you what they do, their challenges, and where they want to go. And you have to really absorb all of this information about the company, their customers, their products. So I see a lot of relationships between languages and everything that opens up about people. And I think why I really latched on to this role that I found for myself in tech and everything that opened up as well about the business and technology worlds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you went on to study languages, right? And then went into, I found it very interesting you went into pre-sales specifically, because I see that as, when someone's making a decision about, do I buy this or that, the psychological mind games, messy beliefs and experiences and inner narrative, all this, what makes a human a human, I find very interesting. I think in my background's languages, lived in a few places as well. And I think it does give you that flexibility in thinking and sort of ability to maybe recognize that people think differently. We're not all clones of each other. How do you think that helped you thrive in sort of pre-sales and sort of customer support? I think you did as well.
I did. I guess brief background about me is I studied French and linguistics in college, and I got scholarships after college to live in Brussels and continue studying French, Spanish. I also studied abroad in Senegal. I learned Wolof. I learned some Flemish living in Brussels. And then I ran out of visa, ran out of money, and decided when I was about 25, 26, it was time to move back to the States and get a job. So I moved as far away from home as I possibly could within the US. Growing up in New York, that meant San Francisco. And I showed up in San Francisco knowing nothing about the tech industry and immediately got a job in customer support, which I was really interested in because the company said they sold software all around the world. So I hoped that would allow me to use my languages. And it did. And it also allowed me to learn a lot about technology and a lot about the people who use technology. And I think coming into tech from a linguistics background gives you a really unique confidence to ask important questions like, what does this mean? And I think that's definitely led me to starting SaaS Savvy and also being really successful in pre-sales, because a lot of people, especially adults, are afraid to be transparent about the fact that they don't know what something is. And especially in tech, I think people who didn't study computer science or who don't have a technical background, like we all feel a lot of shame for not knowing, I don't know, what an API is or what the cloud is, even though for the last 30, 40 years, as everything's been getting more abstracted and low code and easy and seamless and useful, like we're all still a little bit embarrassed about the fact that we don't know these things. But I think coming into tech with a linguistics background and after having lived in so many countries and being around the dinner table with people, or I don't know, out at a bar or at a concert and asking, not being afraid to ask, what does that mean? I don't know what this word is. That unlocked so much space for curiosity and learning for me, because I was coming into it from that perspective of like, oh, I just don't speak the language of technology, but I've learned all these other languages. I just need to know some clear-cut definitions and I can start to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It's fun. I just immediately thought of cultural differences there as well. So I've noticed first time I worked with lots of different nationalities. So like I've worked in Brazil and Portugal, but with, you know, being like the one or two foreigner, suddenly Berlin, where it's like every nationality you could think of. Difference like American to UK, for example, in how we sell ourselves being a big one. And I wonder whether I imagine San Francisco is you know, reflective of that, where it's really not, you know, you want to sell yourself really well. Therefore, you don't say, I don't know A, B, and C, right? You want to act like you are, you know, you understand everything. And I think also there's a trend in tech where there tends to be this focus on the logical and rational and engineering approach, right? So it's like if we're selling a solution, it's like here are all the specifications versus, okay, we're actually dealing with a human here. Like, what do they understand? What are the beliefs that are coming in? What are their experiences that may shape their buying decision? So did you find then that actually became a real advantage or not when it came to going into pre-sales?
So I didn't immediately go into pre-sales. And I think, so I showed up in San Francisco in 2015. I had just turned 26. There was just like so I immediately got a job in customer support at a SaaS startup. We made mobile apps for big events and conferences. And then I worked in customer success for a travel tech company. We made reservation software for small tourism companies. And I think I was actually really lucky to go into two Series B and Series A startups, because everyone was it felt like everyone was a couple years out of college. And even if people had been in sales for several years or in engineering, like everyone was still learning from each other. And especially in a startup environment, you're coming in every day. There's new problems, there's new customers, there's all this pressure. So I think I was lucky to come into a startup environment where everybody sat close together. You could hear other people's conversations no matter what department you were in. So I think that made me feel really comfortable, and I was able to make friends and business friends with people in the engineering department who I felt comfortable asking questions to. So I was in customer support at a Series B startup, customer success at a Series A startup, did a bunch of other things in between. And then about 2.5 years later, I got a job in pre-sales at Zendesk. I'd never heard of pre-sales before I got into that role. And I was so intimidated and nervous going into Zendesk. It was like the first big company I'd ever worked for. They had just an amazing office on Market Street. Like it just felt so intimidating the first couple of weeks. Everyone on my team also just really nice people. I think I was also hired as an associate, which is a really lucky position to be in because everyone gives you a little bit more ramp time, and also space to ask the questions. So I don't know. I just feel really grateful to have always been surrounded by people who made it okay for me to ask questions. So I never felt like, I never really felt like I was like, I don't know, I'm an associate pre-sales person. Like, how would I know all of this stuff coming in?
How I'd see from coaching a lot of people and now a lot of entrepreneurs, a huge blocker is in everything imposter syndrome, right? This feeling that we're not good enough or not experienced enough. How much do you think going into big company, right? This big brand, Zendesk, oh my God, it's like a real high level company now, and going in and being like, oh, it's made up of normal people, right? How much do you think that informed or gave you confidence later on starting your own business? Do you think, or anything else about Zendesk particularly that helped you sort of make that jump?
I think there's three things. And actually, I think it started way before I even got to tech. So when I was in college, I did study abroad twice. Couldn't get enough. I did a semester in Paris, I did a semester in Senegal. And then after I graduated, I got this special scholarship. I don't think they even give it out anymore, but I got effectively a grant from the French speaking government of Belgium to do an extra year of study in French and linguistics. And when I was in Paris and when I was in Belgium, I was either like tutoring on the side, tutoring English, and also in Belgium, I was doing this research project where I went into, and this was an extension of a research project I did in Senegal, where I basically cold called public high schools and asked to do interviews with students to understand how they used French and Wolof and Serer, or French and Dutch and English on a day-to-day basis, because these are truly multilingual cities. And I feel like those experiences, and then moving into a startup environment where you're wearing multiple hats and you have to do things for the first time, I feel like those experiences of being in foreign cities, speaking foreign languages, having to pitch myself and my projects and what I was learning, like that really prepared me to do things I'd never done before, on top of like also finding an apartment, getting, I don't know, like the internet set up, having someone steal my identity card and having to argue with the police. Like all of those things, I think really prepared me to do a lot of things I'd never done before and just do them because they need to get done. And you're the only person who can do them the way that you need to see them through.
If you're enjoying this episode and want to get each shiny new episode straight to whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast, please subscribe using the subscribe button below. Yeah, I'm smiling because I'm very similar. Not as exciting as going to Senegal, but just doing a year abroad in Spain, aged 22, and actually working as well rather than studying. And just being like, oh wow, I need to like make friends here and get to a good level of language where I can actually enjoy social interaction with people and go and register your social security and all this stuff. Just getting that habit of just being out of your comfort zone and getting lots of repetitions, and I imagine also in your case like rejections as well, like cold calling.
Yep.
Builds just this resilience, which I think gives you such an advantage at quite a young age, right? Early 20s, where most people are still sort of, at least in a while, coddled by university or living at home or whatever it is. Interesting. I want to talk about jumping in and actually starting your own business, but I think just final question. You lived in these four very different, so grew up in New York, worked in San Francisco, living in Berlin now, been in Belgium, at different stints in London as well. How do you think each place, what kind of influence do you think those different places, what was the influence of those different places in helping you become an entrepreneur? Or was that actually just irrelevant and just really about building general experience? Like, does anything stand out there when you look back?
I feel like growing up in New York, like where I did, in Westchester, most of my friends' parents were like doctors or lawyers. People worked in entertainment or like, and really in media. And yeah, it's also interesting to think back just like in the early 2000s. I mean, now you can like go on TikTok and you can see what someone's day at work is like. I mean, I remember in college going to the Barnes and Nobles on campus and picking up this like huge book by Kaplan, and you could read about different internships they had. But there just wasn't that much exposure. And I knew I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a media person. My parents are both writers. My mom is a teacher. My dad is a world authority on Bob Dylan. So my parents always had these kind of like quirky careers. So that was always kind of something in the back of my mind. Like, okay, they've figured out how to do something that's not just like run of the mill what everybody else is doing. And so, yeah, for like several years, I just wanted to work abroad. I just wanted to be in other places, learning new languages, meeting new people. San Francisco was not like really somewhere I set out to move, but I bought a one-way ticket there and I had a place to stay and I got a job pretty quickly. I think, again, and I'll be totally honest with you, when I got to San Francisco, like it had never really even dawned on me that people worked at Facebook. Like the tech industry was just not something I knew anything about. Studying French linguistics, tech always seemed like so foreign to me. I just never would have imagined working for a tech company, and never really had to think about it. But I think the thing I loved so much about living in San Francisco, and I was there for 4.5 years, is you can feel the opportunity. There's so much opportunity, and especially moving there in the mid 2010s. There were startups. You go out, you meet people who are starting their own businesses, who've raised money, or just like other people like me who had no idea what they were doing. We're all working in these like insane startup environments that are like so volatile, but everyone's just like young and trying to pay rent. And so you get a lot of interesting people. You get a lot of interesting stories of people who are just motivated to kind of go through something pretty intense to see where it gets them. So that's what I really loved about living in San Francisco, the opportunity and the kind of people you meet who are in it for something greater than just, I don't know, than just like a paycheck and living by the beach or something. London, I moved to during the pandemic, but I think I ended up working with the fintechs. So felt like that was sort of the perfect amalgamation of Silicon Valley tech industry, but also living in London. And Berlin is like really it feels like startup city again. Yeah, all these different cities do have, I think, different things going for them, and I'm really lucky to be able to have plugged myself in and seen what's going on in different tech hubs around the world. Yeah, it's a pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, amazing place to live. I think that environment is so important. I mean, it's such a common thread. It's not necessary, right, to start your own business, but just sort of getting exposure to be like, oh, like if they can do that, then I could do it. Because, I think we have this myth around entrepreneurship that it's the genius math whiz, from your school that's the only person that's going to start a business, and it's not. Like, there are loads of these under the radar businesses, or I was probably like maybe just above average at school, but managed to start a business where other people haven't. And I think it's things like resilience, right? It's being in the right place. It's creating your own luck in different ways. And but yeah, if you can in your 20s go and live in somewhere where businesses are being built, then that's really going to help just open up your mind and your confidence. Let's talk about starting the business. So SaaS Savvy, what was the trigger to start that business?
Okay. So as I said, I was so intimidated when I got a job at Zendesk as a pre-sale solutions consultant. I had never worked for a really big company before. I was hired as effectively a technical salesperson with really no technical background. Like I'd had a bunch of blogs in the 2010s, so I had figured out how to like use HTML, but that was really it. The two other startups that I worked for, like if you grew up using software and you're comfortable like using any sort of internet tool, I think you could get the hang of it. But at Zendesk. So for those of you who are not familiar with pre-sales solutions consulting, the way I describe it is in really big software companies where you're selling to large enterprises, the sales account executive is really in charge of people and paper. So it's their job to qualify and find the right prospects who are going to turn into loyal customers who love your products. There's a lot of paperwork that goes into that. There's a lot of making sure that you're finding the right stakeholders in a business to go through an evaluation. And then of course there's legal and pricing and all of that. So it's too much for them to be able to basically have a Rolodex of every single product and feature in your book that's going to help customers solve their problems. So solutions consultants, pre-sales solutions consultants, or sales engineers, a couple of different names for them, they support different account executives and they are the technical product expert. So it's your job as a pre-sales solutions consultant to know every product and feature within your company, but also to understand the greater tech ecosystem around your product. As in enterprise software sales, you are never just selling your product or your one feature. You've got to be able to integrate into the rest of your customer's stack, whether that's like another SaaS tool or a legacy on-premise application or something built by SAP in the 1980s. So you have to know your own stuff, but then also how you're going to work with everything and sort of be the beating heart and tell that story to the customer, how you're going to plug in and make not just this one particular problem better, but how that problem is going to be solved kind of across the whole organization. So that's pre-sales in a nutshell.
So you were coming in intimidated at Zendesk, coming to this new role, right? Pre-sales. How did that then eventually trigger SaaS Savvy? How did you go from, I've got this problem, I imagine trying to solve it yourself to do your job properly, to then going, oh, maybe this could become a product?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I was like, why am I telling you about pre-sales in such depth?
I lose my train of thought.
So I got hired as associate pre-sales solutions consultant because in my past jobs, I didn't realize what I was doing at those software companies, even though I didn't need to be able to talk about APIs or talk about, Amazon S3 buckets. What I was doing in the two startups that I worked at when I first moved to San Francisco was understanding how a business worked, understanding their workflows, their goals, and their challenges, and then mapping those to our software. So I think I proved myself able to do that. And I think that's what got me this role at Zendesk. But as a pre-sales SC at Zendesk, I really had to be able to understand technical topics. So for example, product and data security questions, that falls on pre-sales. So when customers ask, like, where's our data processed? Where's our data stored? All of a sudden you're having conversations about servers, cloud servers, data centers. And that's just the basics. So there were lots of technical concepts related to software and APIs that I needed to be the go-to person to talk about. And when I first got to Zendesk in 2017, we had 4 products that were pretty easy to, as a person without a super technical background, they were pretty easy to tell stories about and understand. So we had email ticketing, help center, live chat, and a telephony product. But then within the first year of me working there, the whole company migrated to Amazon Web Services. We built this developer platform that was not for business users, but for our customers, developers to build on and extend the functionality of our product. And then we acquired several more companies that were also built for developers. So I was no longer just telling stories about, pretty live chat user interfaces and reducing, agent support time. I can't remember these little acronyms, but really talking to developers and helping people understand, you can use our products, but you can also extend the functionality and plug into all of these different tools. And anyway, at first I had no idea what I was talking about. And I don't like not knowing what I'm talking about. I don't like, just quippy product marketing messaging. When you're in sales, and I don't think salespeople get enough credit for this, like you are on live phone calls or live Zoom calls with customers, and the conversation so quickly goes off script. There is no script. Like, you have anywhere from like 5 to 10 people on a call, CTO, VP of engineering. They've got questions, and you want to be confident and be able to understand what they're asking you. So anyway, I basically came up with this huge list of technical terms that I wanted to understand what they were. And I went online because we didn't have these resources within the company. I went online to try to find courses that would just teach me what a server is, not teach me how to code. And basically, I found there were really great courses for like 7-year-olds that will teach you what the internet is and how data centers work. You know, they're kind of talking to you in this very like saccharine, sweet voice that they talk to second graders in. And I'm like, I'm an adult. I just want to know this too. Or on the other end, there's so many courses that will teach you data science or teach you JavaScript, but JavaScript does not give you the language. It doesn't give you the conversational skills to talk about technology. It just teaches you how to code. And I really wanted to and needed to go into conversations with customers and talk to them about software and really the power of technology. So that's when I noticed a gap in what's available for adults.
How did you go from, so you see this gap, which many people see, right? I think, they go, okay, well, there's something here. I've got a business idea. And then they don't cross the void into starting. How did you then go from seeing that gap to first paying customer, for example?
I mean, it was kind of a slow build. I would say maybe like a year or so. I mean, the whole time, my whole like first year at Zendesk, I was just writing down everything that I learned, and we were growing really fast. We were in like hyper growth mode. So there were a lot of new people who would start, and I would just like send them my binder of information. And I realized like how many people needed this, and also how many people weren't admitting that they needed it. And as I said, like, I think my like linguistics background and just having lived in all these countries, I was just like, okay, well, if no one else is going to say that they don't know what AWS is, like, I'm never going to really figure this out. So I just was like, well, I'll just take one for the team. So I started making these resource documents and sharing them across my team, anything from like, what is IT? What does IT do? What's a data center? What's the cloud? And I started sharing those across my team. And as time went on, I was like, okay, I think there's something here. And so during the pandemic, with all the extra time we had, I really started kind of thinking about, okay, like, what would this course look like? What exactly would I teach people? Like, tech industry is really big. So I really started thinking more about like what kind of people working in tech I would want to serve, and like also what information I would need to know much more formally in order to teach them. So the SaaS Savvy gears really started getting going during the pandemic. And then my last year at Zendesk, I actually switched from pre-sales to a role in, they kind of created the role for me, but it was actually in product marketing, but I was hired as an internal product marketer. So I had sort of made a name I had definitely made a name for myself within the Zendesk sales organization as someone who could work with our platform architects team, that really like the technical teams who supported the sales cycle. I was really good with going to them and being like, hey, I don't understand what this new platform feature does. I don't understand what our new messaging SDK does. Can you explain it to me? Can you give me use cases? So like really tying the technology and the business together. I'd made a name for myself doing that. So my last year at Zendesk, I got a job officially doing that. And that role also gave me the opportunity to build this internal course at Zendesk called Tech Academy, where I built like a 101 to 300 level course that filled in the gaps on everything that people on the sales side needed to understand in order to better sell our products and services. So it went from like technical topics like, what is software? What's an API? What's a webhook? And once you had that foundation in place, then some of the higher level courses were like, okay, now that you know what a webhook is, here's what Zendesk webhooks are. Here are what Zendesk APIs do. So that was a really great experience to have the year before I left to actually start SaaS Savvy and bring this sort of information out to a greater audience.
Test the concept. I find it really interesting as well. I think it'd be really easy to go, I'm non-technical, therefore I cannot talk about technical things. And to then step back and say, actually, oh my God, I'm not going to do this. It's really scary. How did you, I suppose by the time you're doing a pilot, you're like, oh, I've seen the impact of it. What gave you the confidence just to jump in with it? Was it the fact that you go, well, I've used this and it's worked for me, so why the hell wouldn't it work for somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I was a really successful solutions consultant.
Mm-hmm.
I had great numbers. I performed so well. I got transferred to London. When I got to London, I went from just working with any business in the UK to being aligned to this really specific vertical we had with UK fintechs, which are really like where there's so much innovation and money to be spent in the UK market. And so, yeah, like I had a ton of success learning and teaching myself these technical concepts so that I could speak with technical teams. Like in San Francisco, I was aligned to the San Francisco territory. That meant we were selling to like any tech company. You go in BART to take the subway in San Francisco and you'd see whatever big tech company had just gotten a ton of funding and like taken over the subway station. And I would be like, okay, I'm probably going to meet with that customer next week.
Phone,
yeah. These were all, I didn't know what it meant at the time, but these were all like cloud native companies who wanted to talk integrations. They wanted to talk tech, and I wanted to be able to talk tech with them. And the same thing with the fintechs. So I think I had like a lot of proven success to myself that made me really confident. And I saw just how much like different trainings I would do, or just like different information I would be able to send someone over Slack. They'd be like, oh my God, I just got hired, but I have a huge demo with this like Fortune 500 company, and they want to talk about AWS integrations, and I would be like, oh, here you go. And it would just completely relieve someone's stress because they had someone to turn to and something to use. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence, as did all of the technical people at Zendesk who really like helped support me. And again, like make it okay for me to ask questions and like ask questions again, not only so that I understood it, but so that I could help other people. Sorry?
I'm sure your engineers loved you.
Yeah, they're like,
Alice, leave me alone.
But yeah, it's interesting really too.
Yeah. Carry on, sorry.
Well, just, I think, yeah, I formed some very good friendships with some of the like engineers and platform architects. And I think it was always an interesting process for them too, because like engineers don't really have to know what stuff is. They need to know how to use it. And so I think I definitely challenged them to like really articulate the differences between, I don't know, let's say like an API and a JavaScript API. Like to them, it might not really matter because you just need to use it. But to someone who needs to explain it to an enterprise business executive, or to someone else on the team to create a solution, like those nuances are really important. So I think I like to think that they learned some things from the situation too.
Yeah, it's a really nice like first principles approach to just breaking everything down, right? And sort of just what is this in simple terms? Like why are we using it? How can we explain that? I do want to come on to like how you switch from internal product to doing this as a paid other business. But just final question on that. I think the phrasing was really interesting. You said most people, when they talk about their product, don't understand intuitively the importance of positioning. So they will go, for example, say they build a course and they'll go like, here's a course on product management or sales. But you seem to naturally phrase it about, look, I'm basically putting this tech academy to help you sell our services better, right? To help you do your job better. Was that just something natural based on like explaining it in terms of impact and value rather than like, here's all the specification? I mean, I suppose that is the job of pre-sales, but did that come naturally? Is that something you thought about, like you trained about? Does it come from your languages background maybe?
Yeah, I think in pre-sales, like as a solutions consultant, you are consulting on solutions, you're finding solutions. And I saw a huge problem in tech sales, or really like across all of go-to-market and other roles like customer success, where you get a job at a software company and you have no background in software. And it's kind of like, don't worry about it. You just need to understand the value. You just need to understand what our products do. That's a huge problem for people, because when you're advising people on software and you're advising people on integrations, you have to at least have and all you need is a high level understanding. But if no one gives you that high level understanding, then you are not going to be able, like as an account executive, you're not going to be able to be sufficient. You're going to be terrified to be on calls with customers without your solutions consultant who has the technical knowledge. Or you're going to be that solutions consultant who's somehow gotten this job. And you're going to be like, oh crap, like I am that technical person and I don't have this information. That doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel good to show up for work every day worried and not confident in your abilities to go beyond the perfect marketing messaging that you get with every product release. And same goes for customer success. So I actually cannot remember the question you asked me at all, but that is the problem I was solving. And I think that's why, okay, you asked me about like, why did I want to help people? Like that's all I was ever trying to do at Zendesk. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years, is like help people hit their quotas, knew their customers, and go into every meeting confident to let the conversation flow and to really build relationships with customers by just knowing your shit.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up a really, again, I mean, it's where many people, well, talking about business building, it's like try to solve your own problem, because you're just going to have such a depth, like the way you just talked about it. I mean, obviously you've been doing this for years now, but the way you just talked about the problem, and why I love this business is on the outside, it's like, why the hell would a salesperson need to understand tech, right? Like, yeah, like they sort of hypothetically get, like you should know roughly what you're talking about, but it sounds like a non-acute problem, right? As an outsider, I don't do sales in an organization. It's easy to go, well, like, yeah, maybe they're curious and they want to like learn how to code, and great, that's maybe there's a product there. But actually, when you talk about it, it's clearly a very acute problem for this specific market, which is, I can't do my job properly. If I can't do my job properly, I'm not going to hit my targets. I'm going to get fired at some point. That dread of every single call being caught out, right, by not knowing something or just worrying about the phone even ringing.
Yeah.
Suddenly you go, this is a serious problem for this target market. And that's always a really good foundation for a business, because they're going to, you want to solve, if it's a real big problem, you're going to want to solve it quickly and happily pay money for it. Let's talk about that bridge. So you're doing this internal tech academy at Zendesk. How did you then go from doing that to Alice as a solopreneur selling this to people outside the organization?
So I was working on the idea for SaaS Savvy and figuring out exactly what I needed to know, because I really want to be an expert in this. Like I didn't want to just like build a business. This is how I wanted to build a business. I wanted to be the face of SaaS Savvy. I think it's really important for people to see a woman who's not a developer talking with confidence about technology and talking about it at the intersection of business. So I wanted that person to be me, because it's something I've become really passionate about. And I knew that in order for me to build this course and for me to lead the business, I would need to take some time to like really basically do my own like mini master's degree in computer science and cloud computing. So I knew that I wanted to have dedicated time to do that before starting to build the course. So I would say about 2 years before I left my job, I was like on the side planning what the course would look like, but also saving a lot of money, because I knew I didn't want to raise any money to build this business. I was going to completely bootstrap it on my own. I did. Yeah. I feel like a lot of the planning was just like really financial. How much do I need? Where am I going to live? Questions like that. And so I don't know, there just wasn't really a question in my mind. I was like, this is a huge problem. No one is really solving this. Like I've solved this problem for myself and I love doing it. Like it wasn't really even a question. It was never, am I going to do this? It was just like, how am I going to do this and when? And so, yeah, that was like really it. And then I just, once I had enough money and a plan and a really supportive
sorry,
boyfriend, I quit.
So you basically set yourself up financially, said, look, I'm going to quit and then just see how it goes. Was there any preparation you did to prove that people were willing to pay, or was it really just, I'm just going to give this a go and see what happens?
Yeah, my plan was I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to take like 4 or 5 months and do my own DIY master's degree in computer science and cloud computing. And then I'm going to write this course and then I'm going to release it. I felt like I already, just having worked and experiencing the problem myself and seeing like the results that learning to talk tech got for me, I was really confident that I would be able to have those results for other people. And I think, being able to sort of like test the waters through building the Tech Academy course at Zendesk, I saw what people needed to know. And so I didn't do like a huge validation before I quit and went to start my own company. But yeah, after I took 4 or 5 months to study and become more confident and like really having taken the time to learn cloud, like I got AWS certified, then I started building the course, and then I did the beta, which was about a year ago.
Interesting.
And I just launched last week.
We'll talk about the beta in a second. Just observation. It's really interesting because, I think particularly coming from a startup world, there's this whole thing of like, come up with the idea, test it immediately. And I'm a big proponent of that, right? Try and really go from idea to validation. Validation being, is someone willing to pay you money for this really quickly? What I like, this is a really good counterexample because it sounds like there's like a 5-6 year incubation period, right? So this problem is identified, you're sort of slowly developing it out, but because it's an underserved market, there's no big rush, right? Nobody's jumping into this. It's not like we're launching like AI automation sales tool where there's like 100 companies, way more than that even, trying to do the same thing. Because you found this really nice niche, it's sort of quietly in the background. There's no big rush to get something out to try and solve it. And, the fact that nobody jumped into the space shows that was actually the approach that worked quite well. Let's talk about the beta then. So you've done sort of skilled up, let's say, feel really confident, ready to rock and roll in terms of teaching this stuff. How did you then get the first paying customers with a pilot program?
And I think before I answer your question about the beta, I think like one thing I will say on this sort of like startup approach to building software and then like testing it, making sure that you can like quickly validate. Like I see myself as really building more of an education company than I do like a digital product. And to be honest, I think the thing that I've really struggled with the most over the last year and a half is figuring out how to do that, because so much advice that I get from people, or so much advice that, you see on the internet, on LinkedIn, is really about like, how can you just like build something as quick as possible and get that feedback and make sure that you're doing the right thing. Moving fast for me, especially building an online course where I'm teaching people like real technical topics, then I don't want to give people the wrong information. And I want to make sure that it's really explained in a way like that takes time. And I've like really had to hold on to, I know this is a problem. I know that having this foundational knowledge can really help someone, again, hit their quota, get a new job. And it's definitely been a struggle to like feel this pressure to move really fast, because that's just what people do in tech, but also to like take my time and just make sure that I'm making the best educational product that I can. So just something I thought I would add in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's that balance between quality and speed, I suppose. And it's something I've thought about actually the last, sort of evolving a bit more my thinking of leaning towards like do something that is high quality, but also try to get feedback at every step of the journey rather than building in the dark. Right, paid beta.
Okay,
so
paid beta.
How did you actually get people to give you money?
Yes. So this was like another interesting learning too. So I started building the beta course in January 2023. And I was like, great, I will have a finished product by June. I'll be ready to go. It'll be perfect. that was crazy. I have learned through this process. I set very audacious goals for myself, and it doesn't always serve me well to like not really be realistic about what goes into it, because effectively for my business, what I had to do was teach myself a whole bunch of technical knowledge and then write a textbook. Like I've written effectively a textbook on software and cloud computing, and then take that textbook, draw all the illustrations myself, and also make it engaging for adult learners, so that and make it something that's like digestible enough for them to take and feel really good about. So the thought that I could do that in 6 months was nuts. But what I did do was somewhere that winter, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna write this textbook, and it's a beta. So I want to take learnings from people like you and other digital product people and just get something out there and get feedback on it. So I will do a beta this winter. My course is on demand, and I never wanted to do a cohort-based course. I always wanted to do something on demand because that was just like always what worked for me personally when I was in a corporate setting, like just having the time to do it on your own. But I was curious to know more about what it would be like to run like part of it cohort based. Like, is that something I want to do? Is that something my students actually want to do? And I'm just using my own bias to not do that. And then also, like, what would it be like to start bringing in different people from the tech world to offer more than just a video course, but like, workshops or sessions. So I used the beta as like a dress rehearsal really for the content, the students, the acquisition, and then really just the whole course itself, like seeing if this was something I wanted to do or if that was going to work. And one thing I wish I hadn't done was try to build the course at the same time. I was like really trying to go gung-ho marketing myself. I think when I started building the course, I was just so excited about what I was doing. And I really wanted to, after so many years of working in corporate, have this like creative outlet. So at the same time I was building the course, I like started a Substack newsletter. I was like trying to start a YouTube channel, and not because I thought I had to, I was just fucking stoked. And it was so much. Yeah, I feel like I should have just concentrated on one thing. But I think the one thing that stressed me out, the one stressor I always had in the back of my head was like, I would just, see someone's like LinkedIn post and it would be like, if you don't have an email newsletter, then you're going to make this product and you're going to have no one to sell to. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to be me. I'm going to have no one to sell to. I actually, like, for my experience, at least, I don't agree with that, especially big ticket items. Like I was selling my beta for $450 and my course is going to go for like over $1,000. No one is going to get your email and just buy it. In my experience, that takes a lot more personalized outreach, especially from the get-go when you are starting your first ever thing. Like most people are not just going to get an email and be like, oh, I like Alice, here's $450. So that was actually, to be honest, that was a good learning. The way that I got my customers, like I announced it on LinkedIn and I sent out an email, but I got my first customers by DMing people and really taking the time to learn who they were, the company they were working for, and writing like short messages that would introduce myself in my course, but really speak to their day-to-day problems and how my course could help them.
How did you DM? It's really interesting that, I mean, it's a counter, yeah, as you say, it's sort of the counterintuitive approach, like build audience first. I sort of agree. I think you know, if you've got a good offer, people will engage you. How did you specifically, what was the process of actually finding people, DMing them, having that conversation with them?
So I was working with a business coach last year. Her name is Ellen Donnelly of The Ask, and really smart. And she helped build a lot of startups and hire people for startups and help them scale. So she definitely had some good insights about what I should do. I think I remember going to her and be like, I announced it on LinkedIn, but no one bought. And so together she helped me say, okay, well, like it's just time to, it's time to start cold calling or cold DMing. So I came up with a list of like 50 people, either in my network who worked at SaaS CRM companies or people who had followed me. So I just like went on my LinkedIn and I was like, oh, okay, who's been following me lately? Who's been liking my posts? And what I did first, so I came up with this list of 50 people who, worked in my niche and who I felt could benefit from my course. And I wrote them like a very short message on LinkedIn. And I said, hey, I'm Alice. Like, this is my SaaS Savvy course. These are the problems that helps account executives or customer success managers like you solve. Let me know if you're interested to learn more. The people who responded to me and said they were interested in learning more, I then created them like a maybe 1 to 2 minute pitch on Loom where I was like hyper personal, like doing things that don't scale. And so, for example,
What
there was an
specific, when
account
you say not,
executive.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, specific examples. Sorry, when you did that, Luke.
Yeah, there was, for example, an account executive at Salesforce who responded to me and was like, oh, that's really interesting. I think that would really help me. Can you tell me more? And then I looked at his LinkedIn profile, like looked at his educational background, which was not in anything computer science related. I saw that he'd only worked at Salesforce for a few years. So I kind of had an understanding of like, okay, this guy's smart, he's motivated, but he probably just never learned how a data center operates. And so I recorded him, I think like a 60-second pitch that was like really tailored to him, where I thought he was in his career, where I thought he wanted to go, and then how my course would help. That was always really like the guiding message of this is what I'm providing. Here's how it's going to help you. And he bought the beta within like an hour. That was a really cool feeling. Yeah, it was so personalized to him. And I think that's really the approach. Now that I've launched the course, that's still the approach I'm taking. Like I definitely see, at least for the next 6 months, I'm going to be really white glove. I think a lot of people talk about building a community. Like I really want to build a community. I really want to connect with my customers and help them connect to each other to get new jobs or learn about what's going on in different spaces in tech. So that white glove experience is going to be really important for me, and making people really understand how my product is going to not only solve their problems, open up so many doors in their careers and also help them earn more money.
Yeah, I love it. And it's, again, it's a slight counterexample where, we always say you need a content strategy, but actually if you've got a really good offer, it's very specific, there's not really competition, then go direct to people. It's not, they're either going to ignore you or engage with you. Just to be clear for people to understand. And the other thing, people don't understand how much of a drain content strategy, creating regular content, just time plus energy. And I've done it for 5 years. It is tiring. It's really tiring. God. And then, writing full blog posts as well. So just, can you share the numbers on that? So let's say you reach out to, initially as well, I mean, it's great, you got it right first time. You reached out to 50 people. How many looms did you, how many engaged, i.e. said they're interested? How many then converted to sales?
I had about 20 students in my pilot, and I think I made, like, I had some people in my network who I didn't need to make looms for. I probably made like 8 looms, and I think like 4 of those looms converted.
Wow, really good. So roughly 50 people outreach, 8 looms, 4. So
yeah. And the looms, because I had some people take the course at a discount. Like I was very flexible. To be honest, I did not really care about making money in this pilot. Like that was not the goal for me. Yeah, I know that people will pay for this course. Call me crazy, but I know people will do that. So for me, it wasn't like, the pilot was not to see, can I make money from this? I know I can make money from this. The pilot was to see, is the content good? Is the content what people want to know? Is it too much? Is it too little? Do I need to have live sessions? It was really to test more of that. So I will say the looms resulted in like full payment. And then I did discounts for like other people. But it was unbelievably effective, the looms.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it was the 8% success rate is really high. So it's good for, again, if you get good offer and you clearly take your time and do white glove, then that sort of clearly works for you. I know it's worked for a few other companies as well. Yeah, I love it. So you've gone from, but you did the beta program with 20, which again, 20 is great. You get enough people to really get start seeing like trends, what's working, what's not. So I find that dangerous territory is say like 3 sales or 5, because then it's very easy to knee-jerk react to, one person says one thing and then you go, oh my God, we need to change everything and adapt it in this potentially wrong direction. I think with 20, you start to sort of get a sense of what you're doing right and what you could improve. How did you then go from beta to now launching the full course? Like, was there any major differences, any key learnings you took away from the beta program?
So the beta was actually a mix of, because I'll say this. So I showed up in San Francisco and I showed up as a pre-sales solutions consultant, not knowing anything about tech and not just what a server is or like how code works. I also didn't really know anything about the tech industry and the business side. So as I spent the first 4 or 5 months really studying cloud computing, I saw the connection to the business side like even greater. So the beta course was a mix of technical and business topics in SaaS and cloud computing. And this flagship course, Sell SaaS Smarter, which is my first course I've just launched, it's just the technical topics. Like ultimately, that is what people signed up for my course for. I think there's definitely like business aspects of tech that are really aligned to cloud computing services and like just the way that it works. But people really signed up for my course for this technical knowledge. And I really wanted to I'm so interested in everything. I was like, I need to be so niche.
Can I ask a very specific question?
Yeah.
How much did you overbuild? So let's say for the beta, what did you cut percentage-wise for the paid course?
So much. Like
what roughly percentage? Because I think this is, again, I've made this mistake as well.
Okay.
Just to give people a sort of a rough idea of what they're probably overdoing. Like 50%, 30%?
Probably like 50 to 60%. Like crazy. And one thing I didn't even think about was just like how long my lessons were. Like some of them were like 12 pages long. And then when you translate that into video, like a 12-page document, maybe that takes you 15 minutes to read. That's like a 35-minute video. So that was something really good to learn too, because people, especially adult learners, don't have like 30. I mean, I guess they could maybe find 35 minutes to find a video. It won't be enjoyable. So I'll say this. So the pilot was a mix of technical and business. Here's the funny thing. Like I also got like a ton of messaging about like, oh, you have to do a beta because you need to get the right feedback. It was interesting. Like, the people who gave me the best feedback on the course itself, like on the actual product, were not necessarily people who paid full price. Like some of the people who paid full price, like I never heard from them. Like they seemed happy, or they're just like, whatever. I bought this beta so that I can get the official version next year. So that was interesting because I didn't, truth be told, I didn't get all of the feedback I really wanted. By some miracle last winter, when I was like really in the depths of like reworking the beta and like trying to figure out what to cut and like what was going to go into this final version, it was so long. I was so overwhelmed in my own making because like, I think it was hard too, coming from Zendesk. You really needed to know so much. Like it wasn't just, I don't know. I didn't just need to know how APIs worked. I needed to know what AWS was, what different cloud computing services were. So it was really expansive, everything that I needed to know. And my course kept expanding. And I was conscious of that, but I couldn't see what was too much. And I didn't feel like I got really specific enough information from my beta participants. And I think also I was like scared to ask. I think I was like really afraid. All of my beta participants were wonderful and they were really engaged. Some people more than others. But I think especially after the beta ended, people are so busy. People are so bogged down in their jobs. I think I felt really, it was less about like being scared to ask people for money, but to ask people for time. It made me really nervous and intimidated. So anyway, I was introduced to a woman named Cass, who works in customer support for a SaaS company through an old colleague. And she asked me, she was like, I want to take your course so badly. Can I beta test it? And I was like, yes. And so over this winter in 2024, I got a very enthusiastic beta tester who could really see how the information in my course could help her. I mean, I owe her so much. She like completely turned the course around. I had her take the first module of what was going to be my official course in February. And she was exhausted by the end of the first module. And she was like, no, I mean, it was good. It was really informative, but like, can I get like a certification for that module on its own? Like that was a lot. Like I want to like put on my LinkedIn profile that I learned about computer hardware. And she said something that really clicked for me. She said, no, it was a lot. Like I'm happy I did it. And I was like, well, I don't want people like you to feel like happy they finished. Like I want you to feel like you got through something, and I want you to get that like boost of confidence that you want more from me. I don't want people to finish this course and feel like so exhausted and tapped out by the end of it. So it was really thanks to Cass that I was really able to start chopping and move from this idea of this like one big flagship course where I teach people everything they need to know to what I've effectively launched with Sell SaaS Smarter, which is like the essentials and the foundations that leave room for me to make more courses and then have different bundles that I can sell people. Like if you just want the foundations, take this course. If you want more and you want to be able to get a job for like a developer company, or you want to actually go sell cloud services with AWS, then you can actually buy more of my courses, but I don't overwhelm people with like everything possible from the start.
Yeah, I think two key learnings there. One is we almost always over engineer, whether it's building a digital app with 3 features rather than 1, or a course where we're adding just way too much content. I think that second one is that conversation, always just constantly getting feedback. That's why I think bootcamps particularly are great for that, where you're just constantly interacting live with small groups, and but also reading between the lines, right? And if someone's saying, oh, it's very informative, what they mean is like there's way too much information, that kind of thing, and just trying to work out what they really want, what real challenges they're facing, because they're rarely just going to tell you, Alice, this is too long, you should cut it by 30% or whatever it is. Interesting. I want to just move towards a conclusion, actually. Actually, I suppose any other sort of big key learnings going from, so you've got that, obviously importance of customer feedback, the packing in too much information. Are there sort of any other big key changes you've made before we move on to quick fire questions?
So, I mean, just in terms of the content, I was able to whittle it down and really focus the content just on the technical topics. What's really unique about my course is because I'm selling to people who are in sales or pre-sales or success, where they're not like, you're never going to go into a meeting and be like, a server serves requests to clients over the internet. You're never going to talk about that. You need to know what a server is so you can tell interesting stories of software that convert, so that you can bring in what's going on in the world of technology to these conversations. I hate to say it, but be a thought leader and be confident in your jobs. I added in, my course is technical content, so like learning jargon and terminology and history, which really illuminates a lot of the relationships between technology and helps you not just understand what something is, but like why something is, and why this innovation happened. But I also have guided reading and listening where people learn terminology and then they get to hear it spoken about in like a real world news setting, or from a startup founder or tech executive. So I think that makes it really unique and much more well-rounded than just like, here's what an Amazon EC2 server is. Like, here's how people use it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I suppose you could even add on storytelling modules, right? I find the same in product. People generally they'll happily talk about features and specifications, but they don't know how do you create a narrative to get somebody excited about, like, why the hell are you talking about this stuff, essentially. Yeah. I want to wrap up with 2 quick-fire questions. First one, what one piece of advice, if you could only choose one, would you give an aspiring entrepreneur to get started?
I would say be really clear about your idea and your vision and how you want to get there. And like always keep that as a North Star, because I was really confident when I left my job to start my business. I was really confident. I was like, I honestly wasn't nervous at all. It was when I started like promoting myself or kind of learning more about, like, I thought the scariest thing I was doing was leaving my job to start an online course about something that I like didn't have an official master's degree in. I think the biggest challenge in starting an online course was like learning how to build an online course and kind of understanding that this is like a huge industry and there's like lots of ways to do it. And as soon as you start a business, people want to share advice with you. You know, it comes from a good place. People want to share advice. People want to like make sure that you don't make the same mistakes that they did. And all of a sudden you can get inundated with everything that you should be doing. You know, looking back on the last 2 years, I really not fell prey to that, but I didn't have like good defense mechanisms. And I feel like there was a while where I really lost confidence. I didn't feel like I could make any decision without consulting somebody else or like seeing what somebody else was doing. And so I would say like, look, you've got enough grit and confidence to have even started to do something. Like you've made it so much further than anybody else. So be really clear and confident. Like obviously be open to suggestions, but don't let just the bombardment of advice and maybe anxiety coming from other people like affect you and make you feel like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great advice. Final question. People are scared of rejection naturally. They're particularly scared of asking for that first sale. What piece of advice would you give somebody who, you know, might have a product or an idea and they're not quite just getting to the point where they're asking someone, are you going to pay for this?
I think what I learned as a pre-sales solutions consultant was if you really focus on your customer and what you will do for them, the conversation is so much easier. When you don't make it about you, when you make it about what you are bringing to the table and how this can help someone else, like you're making it about them. So if they don't want your help to solve, you know, to solve their problem, that's a lot, I think, easier to swallow than like, oh, they don't want me and they don't want my business. And I think ultimately, like, that's just a better way to sell. When you're selling solutions and not yourself or a thing, it's just a better conversation all around.
Yeah, I think it's that there's sort of one of the guests used the phrase consultative selling. You know, it's really a conversation. It's trying to understand, is it even relevant pitching the solution to them and focusing on them rather than yourself. Alice, that was really good fun. Any calls to action? So SaaS Savvy, just to be crystal clear, is now publicly available. It's live. Where can people follow you? Are you posting content? And finally, link to SaaS Savvy.
So SaaS Savvy is my online course business where I teach sales, pre-sales, and success professionals about software and cloud computing so they can sell software and cloud computing. And Sell SaaS Smarter is my flagship course, and it teaches the essentials in software, IT, cloud, and APIs so that you can have revenue generating conversations about software that actually convert. And so I launched Sell SaaS Smarter a week ago, July 2024. It's on demand. You can go to saassavvy.io and enroll in the course. You'll have it immediately starting this fall. In September, I'm going to be doing, it won't be cohort based where we go through all of the courses, but you'll be able to start the course and meet up weekly with live groups for that group effect. And personal experience. But otherwise, yeah, the course is available and I can't wait to get more students in it and get this information out because I know it can, I know how much this knowledge can change your life and change your career path in a really positive way.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alice, for joining. And I think a lot to learn about sort of getting business started, getting that first product out the door and people actually paying for it. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Henry.
thank you for listening to another episode of Refounders. If you enjoyed this episode and want to get each shiny new episode straight to whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast, please subscribe using the subscribe button below. If you're feeling generous, why not share with a friend?